This is what the Iranian foreign minister, Hertiage, had to say over the weekend, as reported and translated by Fox News.
We have been discussing the temporary route, and we are very close to reaching a conclusion. Work is being carried out based on the maps of this route. Prepared by the armed forces, negotiations have taken place between the navies of the two countries, and the details are being finalized. I believe we will be able to conclude these negotiations very soon.
You'll pardon my lack of enthusiasm. Iran also demanded the release of foreign Iranian assets, an end to U.S. military's presence, really, in the Strait, and also cash and prizes to rebuild. So, more or less, we're on the same hamster wheel we've been on, it seems to me, but we'll get Stephen Bucci's perspective on that momentarily. One piece I wanted to reference as well to inform our conversation, Brian Kennedy writing in The American Mind in defense of Trump's strategy here, mostly, but he also has some suggestions to both of the supporters as well as skeptics. On expectations, the American people should not expect a surrender ceremony on the deck of a battleship. Wars against regimes like the one in Iran don't end cleanly. They end when the enemy is denied the means of destroying you and knows that any attempt to rebuild those means will bring their destruction. That's the standard by which President Trump's conduct of this war should be judged, not the false choice between a forever war and a pretended peace. Yes, and Brian Kennedy gets to the point of that's exactly the message that President Trump and his representatives should be sending to the American public, doing a little bit more explaining and a little bit less of sort of having to bat back the forever war accusations and doing so just sort of categorically. And this hamster wheel I just described of we're on the cusp of. He also goes on, does Kennedy, to those who support the president but not this war, let me ask a question in a spirit of friendship. How long did we imagine it would be before something had to be done about Iran? The choice before us was never between this war and no war. It was between war now on our terms against a regime not yet armed with nuclear weapons and war later on their terms, quite possibly announced by the destruction of an American city. And he goes on to say, as I sort of referenced, President Trump, knowing well the American people's reluctance to go to war, has never fully explained the Iranian nuclear threat to them. Now would be a good time to do so. A people who know the stakes will see the war through to its conclusion. A people kept in the dark will demand it end before its object is achieved and hand the mullahs the only victory available to them. Put simply, the war ends when the nuclear threat from Iran ends and when the regime in Tehran understands that it is suicidal to attack the United States. Until the Golden Dome is complete, President Trump must deny our permanent enemy the permanent object of its ambition. That is the task before us and one we must achieve sooner rather than later. Joining us now for a weekly chat about these types of matters, Stephen Bucci, who served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Hertiage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Well, we're close to a deal to provide temporary passage through the Strait. Responding to that, as well as the Kennedy argument, sort of in support of the war, but pressing the president and his emissaries to provide more explanation here in terms of what the objective is and what the real choice before us is, as opposed to, as he said, the pretend choice of a forever war, the false choice of a forever war or pretend peace.
I think Kennedy put it pretty eloquently there. That we needed to do this, and we were either going to do it later or do it now. Many presidents before Trump have passed on that choice and just not doing it because it was the right thing to do, but doing it because it was the convenient thing to kick it down the road and avoid the issue altogether. But Trump, I think, to his credit, confronted the threat, recognized where it was going to go if we didn't do anything, and has taken action. Now, you may not like that action, and there's lots of people, including me, because I think I'd rather see him get it done and stop this kind of seemingly craziness about the negotiations. That does not appeal to me at all, and I don't think it should appeal to anyone. But that's what he's doing. But I do agree with Kennedy's assessment that this would be a really good time, Mr. President, to go on TV, use the bully pulpit, explain in detail exactly why we did this. My preference would be we're done with the negotiations. These guys either capitulate in the sense not of the surrender ceremony on the battleship, but stop the nonsense. Give up this fiction that they somehow have a divine right to control the Straits of Hormuz. I don't care if they drag the Omanis in or not. That's a no-go. We're not going to let them control those straits. We're not going to let them take fees and fines for people who don't do it exactly their way. That would be at least reputationally suicidal to do that. That would be the equivalent of us surrendering to them on the battleship's deck. So explain to the people, show them why we need to do this, map out a legitimate path forward to reaching that conclusion that we need to have, and then start executing. I think it would be great. Talk to the American people, announce it, and then look at your watch and say, oh, and the planes are hitting their targets right now. That would be the way to go in my mind.
What do you make of this development between the Saudis and the Turks and the Pakistanis, a joint defense agreement that was signed? So, an attack on one of the three is an attack on all these Sunni theocracies, essentially. Joining forces. That doesn't strike me as taking a hard line with respect to the Iranians, particularly given some of the things that Erdogan has said and done.
Yeah, it's weird to see a development like that where the Saudis are the most pro-American and the most moderate of the three regimes involved in the discussions there. I trust Mohammed bin Salman way more than I trust Erdogan or the Pakistani government. That Erdogan, does, to his credit, is pretty obvious that he's a Muslim Brotherhood guy, and that he is now an Islamist and not, just happened to be a Muslim member of NATO. I think it's not the greatest look for a NATO member to go make another mutual defense agreement like this. The Pakistanis, I've worked a lot with the Pakistanis in my special ops life. I like their special operators. They're really, really qualified and good guys. But their government has always been, about the definition of a two-faced friend. They shake our hands. They work with us on one hand. At the same time, they're working against us with other parts of their government. So I think the Saudis may be doing this to have some influence on those other two to maintain control over them. I don't know if that's a useful effort or not. It makes me a little nervous, and it's definitely something our government needs to be watching.
Well, it seems to me this is an attempt by the Turks to project power in the region.
Yeah, I mean, the Turks, much like the Iranians, want to be the empire again. They still believe that the Ottoman Empire was the height of civilization, and they want to go back to it. They think they deserve to go back to it. More so now that they're Islamist, a giant Muslim empire. But the rest of the region doesn't want them having that kind of power, which is why I think that the only logical explanation for the Saudis doing this is to have an extra degree of control over them or influence that they wouldn't have if they didn't have this relationship. That's some comfort, but not a lot to me.
Yeah.
I think the Saudis are playing with fire.
Well, and we may be too. The State Department also announced that it had informed Congress under the Arms Export Control Act of a proposed plan by Turkey to transfer nearly $300 million in Turkish-held U.S.-produced weapons to Ukraine, which is the largest such sale ever to Ukraine by the government of Turkey. And then there's a delineation of the weapons, tactical ballistic missiles and launchers and cluster missiles and stuff that they're selling. So that's obviously being done at the behest of the Trump administration. So what's your read on that transaction?
Well, I think that's the Turks playing that card, doing the cooperative thing with the desire to get more. That they want to get the F-35. They don't want anything to change that deal. So I think they're willing to give up some of these, quite good weapons to get other stuff in the future. But again, you could trust Erdogan about as far as you could throw him. He'll look you right in the eye and lie to you and then do something else. So giving them deal sweeteners is not necessarily a path to attaining what you think you're attaining.
Well, just sticking in Eastern Europe for a second, since Ukraine has been invoked, the sanctions bill in honor of Lindsey Graham that was moved before senators went on their, went to their summer camps. The impact of that against the backdrop of this report that U.S. intel agencies warning that Putin could be increasingly willing to authorize provocative actions that extend onto the territory of NATO's Eastern Front, including hybrid operations, cyber attacks, even and other deniable measures short of conventional military campaign. He wants to sort of expand this war on the Eastern Front, NATO's Eastern Front, maybe allegedly. If that's true, is that just sort of saber rattling? Is that just trying to project strength he really doesn't enjoy? And how do the sanctions factor into this U.S. intelligence?
Well, I mean, this is the same strategy that the Russians use to get the eastern part of Ukraine. They go in, they split around with this stuff. They have people going in, the so-called little green men with no patches, and they're Ukrainian patriots fighting for the Russian people in Ukraine, and they're not. They're Soviet or Russian Spetsnaz. We have to watch it, and if the Russians actually start doing that on the edges of NATO into NATO member territory, we need to slap them really, really hard, really fast. No wag your finger at them. No telling them, hey, back off on this. They need to send in the forces to hunt down and kill any of those people involved. They need to do offensive cyber back at the targets that have launched any cyber operations. They really need to sting Russia if they start to do that. They can't allow them to get any confidence out of that. And because one, it'll make our allies really nervous if we don't respond. And two, it'll embolden the Russians to do more.
The going back to the Middle East, Netanyahu rejecting this proposed Gaza peace plan that would have had Hamas lay down their arms in tandem with the gradual withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. And Netanyahu's basically saying, look, I can't do any sort of gradual withdrawal until they completely disarm. which is a position I understand. What I don't understand is why the Trump administration would go public with this deal if they didn't have the Israelis on board.
Yeah, I'm not sure that was the brightest thing that our administration did. The announcement part, working on it's fine. But yeah, there's no way you're going to trust Hamas and start pulling the Israelis out and say, okay, well, this many are out. You guys need to lay down this many arms. Oh, no, they really need to get them all out before we lay down the arms. And you know what's going to happen as soon as the Israeli soldiers, or enough of them to lessen the threat towards Hamas, is accomplished, Hamas is going to turn around and start shooting again. They are not to be trusted. They make the Iranians look honest, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And the Iranians are not. So that's, I could understand Netanyahu saying, come on, guys, I'm not going to do this. So I don't know why Trump thought if they announced it, I guess, that it would pressure Netanyahu into cooperating. But I don't think we have any reason to want the Israelis to cooperate until this deal is done correctly. And that is, Hamas needs to disarm, needs to break down their structure, particularly for the military parts of it, and then Israel can consider, the risk level in pulling the people out. It's again, negotiating with some of these folks. The only way they will negotiate legitimately is when they know they're beaten. And if they think they can win the negotiation after losing the fight, they'll try and do it. And, I guess you can't blame them for trying, but we should not enable them by going along with it. That's just silly. That's like Obama kind of negotiations.
Yeah,
we might as well bring John Kerry back to do the negotiations for us.
Right. I mean, I remember a simpler time when the stated position of the U.S. government, even if they were playing footsie and trying to be duplicitous and manipulative in the interests of our security interests, which is fine, we do not negotiate with terrorists. I mean, so I sort of like to start from that basis and say, okay, we'll engage, understanding exactly who these people are, and we're willing to deploy diplomatic efforts and so forth, but keep it very general and gooey, as opposed to pretending that Hamas is going to be a partner in some Middle East peace any more than the mullahs in Tehran are going to be. I mean, it's just a little bit too much Norman Vincent Peale for me.
Oh, 100%, especially with Hamas. I mean, come on. Hamas is still lying to, there were no sexual crimes on October 7th.
Please.
We just fought the military. Come on, they burned families alive in their homes and cars. They executed infants in front of their parents. This is the stuff that was done was horrific, and Hamas, frankly, is still really proud of themselves. They thought they pulled off a really good op. They're monsters. If I don't use that term lightly, but from the standpoint of the law of war, they are the ultimate terrorists here.
Just another matter before we let you go. Department of War revoking former Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall's eligibility for access to classified information and his ability to hold any sensitive position, because they believe, Hegseth and company clearly believe, that he was the leak of the unauthorized disclosure of information about Air Force One's capabilities that resulted in having a plane switch having to be done for the president. Just general, what you think, where things stand in the Pentagon with people that are acting in the interest of their perhaps political disposition rather than the interests of America's national security, including the president's security. How much is this still a problem left over from the last administration? And does this call into question the protocols regarding classified information and access?
Well, I'll be honest with you, that this habit of people in sensitive positions or formerly in sensitive positions who leak things because they're trying to either curry favor with political parties running around or with potential employers. If you don't crush that, it's going to continue. And it happens no matter who's in office. This is not just an anti-Trump thing or anything like that. This stuff happens with, it happened when I was in the Pentagon. People would do stuff like that. And it's people need to pay a price for breaking the law and breaking the agreements that they made when they were in those positions of authority and had access to the classified data, and taking away their clearance, banning them from positions of authority going forward has teeth in it, because they're not going to get the same consulting jobs. They're not going to come back into government and be able to do those things that they've done in the past. We've let them get away with it for too long. Look, Secretary Kendall, I know him. He's a nice guy. He's a smart guy. If he did that, or there is enough evidence that the department feels he did that, then you either charge him with a crime and do it, punitively that way, or you use the administrative teeth that is available, strip him of that stuff, and send out the word that people are no longer, invulnerable to punishment when they do this crap. It's unprofessional. It's hurtful to the nation. And it's just inappropriate for people of the level of somebody like Kendall, who should know better and should not be a selfish prig to do this stuff to get himself jobs. Pay the price. I don't have any problem with it.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Hertiage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Have a great week.
And Stephen joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer.